I do believe we are destined to be soulmates.
You're listening to That's Pretty Dark,
the podcast where we talk about all of the entertainment that scared us as children
and still haunts us as adults. So grab your flashlight and join us as we take a frightfully nostalgic look over our shoulders
and under our beds
and in our closets.
And together we'll realize, whoa, that's pretty dark.
Pretty dark.
I'm now recording as well.
Now recording?
Yeah.
So guess what?
What?
It's so hot in my house, and I am...
Sitting in a puddle of sweat?
Because I almost broke my neck last week, I got these two cold compresses. I've got one between my legs, underneath in the hot, hot depths.
So your booty's cold, but the rest of you is hot. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
That's nice. That's real nice.
I mean, that'll chill the rest of you. Don't worry. If between the legs is cold, hey, this is called That's Pretty Dark, and we're here to be dumb.
That's Pretty Dark, and we're having a cold time.
And it's about to heat up, I promise.
See, you had to prepare.
It's going to get real hot real fast.
Yeah.
I promise you faster than you're ready for, and faster than any of us were ready for when we were children. But my name's Kaylin.
And I'm Christian.
And we're glad that you're here. So far, our podcast has been what some might consider dry.
Yeah.
With our topics of choice.
So we thought we'd hit you with a real wet one.
Yeah, you could say that, I guess, in a manner of speaking.
You guys ready to get all hot and bothered and slimy? You
Oh,
guys
that's
get ready
right.
to get slick.
Slick and slimy. Yikes. Well, we're already doing that, so might as well clue you into the fact that this very special collective WTF episode of That's Pretty Dark.
I'm gonna bleep that out.
Yeah, we'll just be
Sorry,
bleep.
Mom.
What the bleep?
What the bleep are you talking about?
These WTF episodes are going to be a little more conversational, a little more fun, a little more loose.
I feel fun and loose.
Exactly, a little bit goofier than the other topics and types of episodes we might cover, but to clue you in on what we're discussing today and all of the really way too much upfront, slimy, sludgy, sexy talk is Toxic Love by your favorite villain, my favorite villain, Hexxus from Fern Gully.
A villain, until recently, I knew nothing about.
So everyone, I'm sure your jaws are hitting the floor right now because you can't fathom a person of our age that does not know who Hexxus is or what Fern Gully is.
Kaylin stopped. We were having like a podcast business meeting, like
a
last
meeting.
week. We were like
a serious business meeting.
a very serious get together,
as serious as we can ever
watch
be.
a scary movie, kind of serious whiskey hangout. But
yes,
she like stopped all progress and was like, "You haven't seen Hexxus."
Yeah. I had a big meltdown and I made him pause and just understand what I was talking about. So today, for your enjoyment, Christian's going to react to this, having never really experienced it before. Well, we'll discuss not only what was present in the film Fern Gully and what was actually part of the film, but also what was released on the official Fern Gully Studios soundtrack.
Yeah.
So
I'm here to learn today.
Personally, Fern Gully was one of my absolute favorite movies as a child, and I'm honestly very excited to cover it eventually for a movie night episode. We'll eventually break down like everything about this animated film. It was not a Disney film. It was not a DreamWorks film. It was distributed by Fox.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it came out in 1992. There are a lot of really fascinating parts of this movie and how it came to be.
It's a fascinating
situation. But basically it evolved from... Well, the movie itself evolved from this guy in Australia and his wife was telling their children these like bedtime stories about fairies in the woods. That is where the story evolved from, based on trying to protect like the native land in Australia, and bled into the whole green sustainable movement. Everybody knows. I don't know if Christian knows, so I guess I should preface it for his sake. I'm not going to get into the whole movie today, like I said, where today is all about just giving credit where credit is due to my main man, Hexxus. Like, Hexxus and Toxic Love comes up all the time in conversation. And when I posted another song, the credits, because I mentioned I made a playlist of all these, like, great 90s R&B credits songs from animated movies.
Yeah.
Among them being Fern Gully with Some Other World by Elton John, And one of my absolute favorites, Cats Don't Dance. But all through that, I posted a story the other day of a song from the Ferngully soundtrack, and 3 different people immediately, like within 10 minutes of me posting a story, which I'm not a popular person, so that's a pretty big deal.
3?
3 whole people were immediately like, wait, but toxic love, though. And I was like, okay, this just seals the deal. We're going to have to talk about it.
We have to do a toxic love episode.
Really right up front, just talk about toxic love. So Christian is in the minority here, I hope. But I think it'll be funny to hear from someone who is, not as familiar with it. But before we listen to the song and really, get into the nitty-gritty of the song and the content of the movie, I thought it would be fun to talk about some fun facts about Hexxus, things that I didn't know, and we'll get more into Ferngully when we do an episode on that later. But Hexxus was animated by a woman named Kathy Zielinski, and she was working with the startup studio that was doing the project, but she also was bouncing around between studios in the late 80s and early 90s. As she came to animate Hexxus, she was coming off of being the supervising animator of Ursula for Disney's The Little Mermaid. So she had a lot of experience with villains and slimy, sludgy things.
Ooh, I can see the resemblance.
Made perfect sense. Mm-hmm. She's also the second ever female to be a supervising animator for a character, like cartoon character, which is insane to me.
Go her.
She's also responsible for characters like Frollo from Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Oh.
She animated Jafar's snake likeness in Aladdin.
Oh my goodness.
Which also just always was in my brain as absolutely terrifying. And she was a staff animator on other movies that we both love, like Mickey's Christmas Carol, Great Mouse Detective, Oliver and Company, Rescuers Down Under, Pocahontas, Prince of Egypt, Spirit, and a ton of other ones.
Oh my gosh.
Which is literally gems. Listing off,
that's just
the perfect
listing
movies.
Off perfect childhood films.
Well, she's still animating today. She's worked on DreamWorks movies. Actually, they stole her from Disney with a $5 million contract. Ooh. So she now animates for DreamWorks exclusively. She's done a lot of their, I say recent, it wasn't that recent, but it was when I was in high school, so it feels recent to me. Over the Hedge and a lot of DreamWorks movies since then. But she's still animating, so one of the most decorated and revered animators, I feel of all time. Yeah. And I thought this was a great quote, and I'm sure it will come up when we talk about the movie too. But Wayne Young, that's the guy whose wife was telling these literal fairy tales, telling them to her children. And he was quoted in a Vanity Fair article that I read about Ferngully as saying that they had to, quote unquote, keep Kathy in a box or she would have scared the hell out of the parents too.
Nice.
So apparently what we see as Hexxus is actually a toned down version of what Kathy could or would have wanted to do with the character. That would have been
so dope. I mean, he's creepy enough as is now that I've seen him.
He's absolutely, to me, as a child particularly.
So this is the censored Hexxus. This is the
Hexxus that we see, yes.
This is the appropriate Hexxus.
Yes.
Wow.
It's already been tampered.
He's been screened.
So that was pretty wild for me to read. I was like, there's no way that's, that's somebody that's pedal to the metal, we're going to do this. But no, apparently not.
If we're going to do it, let's do it right. This isn't Disney. Let's make it scary.
Pretty much.
All right.
So thank you to Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy.
And appreciate all of your work and everything that you've ever done. Thank you so much for literally drawing my childhood.
Literally.
Well, not literally, but drawing everything I remember from my childhood. So much of what lives in my memory was drawn by Kathy Zielinski. So her name should be out there.
Yeah.
More than it is.
But that's why we're here, right?
That's why we're here, to talk
people
about
who made the content that we loved.
Yeah, to celebrate the people that made it possible for us to be in love with all these things.
Here for it.
So the premise of Ferngully is that we're trying to save the rainforest, essentially. It's called Ferngully the Last Rainforest. And the goal is to stop the big machine that's eating all of the trees.
The big bad.
It's just bad. They're tearing down the whole rainforest.
That does sound familiar. I don't know if I've seen something like that in another cartoon or if I've seen this once.
Maybe.
The one time. I don't remember that.
But the fairies are so far removed from reality that they believe that humans don't exist, just human tales. And they're just existing in this forest paradise wonderland with bioluminescent flora. And through this process, I'm trying not to give the whole film away for you since you're going to eventually watch it, but basically the leader of the fairies has locked the spirit of Hexxus away in a tree. And the spirit of Hexxus is released because of these humans and what they're doing to the rainforest. So they don't even realize what they're unleashing. But Hexxus is he's anthropomorphization of pollution. So he is just growing, and his goal, he wants to be godlike. He wants all of Earth to be sludge and slime and polluted.
He's getting his way.
And that's his goal. So as he eats pollution and drinks slime and gasoline and emissions and fumes, et cetera, he becomes stronger.
Fossil fuels.
Yeah, pretty much. This is less of a fun fact and more just an opinion and like a funny thing that I noticed as I was reading about all this stuff. I found it funny that it's called toxic love, and the idea of toxicity in a personality or a person wasn't really around back then, to my knowledge. But it has become a buzzword, and I think rightfully so in many cases.
Yeah.
Like toxic masculinity, for example. And the whole idea of like malignant narcissism and people coming to understand what narcissism is, like as a personality disorder.
Right.
We weren't really there in the 90s. And so it's funny to me that that comes through as toxic love. And his personality is what the kids today would call toxic, I think. So I thought that was pretty funny that there's this like connection to a toxicity that wouldn't become mainstream in psychology for at least another decade, maybe two. Like we're really only just now getting to a point where there's a little bit less stigma around that kind of language and that kind of stuff, but it's still weirdly subliminally came through. And what's crazy is that like the circles that we grew up in, it was mocked. Like I heard it mocked by everybody that I knew. The toxic masculinity.
I don't think I was aware of it.
Of course you weren't.
As a man who was probably very toxic.
Right. Of course you weren't.
It was before my woke years, okay?
Man, we're all getting to our woke years now. Thank God.
Praise the Lord.
It was a very necessary process for us to go through.
So, am I watching his like "I'm Coming Out" song?
Pretty much.
Or is this just like a post-Hexxus release?
Oh no,
song?
no. So basically, throughout the film, you hear these like hints of Hexxus. Like you see the tree with the big. It's like a scary looking tree thing. I'm not gonna give you too much of the order of operations of events because I want you to like
watch it.
Yeah, watch it and appreciate it. But he's in a tree and then he's not. And throughout the movie, you're seeing this like hissing. It's like this very like scary, ominous like hissing sound as you see this sludge like sliding across and down a drain, or like you get these hints of what Hexxus is.
Right.
And then toxic love is essentially his like I've become who I am kind of thing.
Got it. He had to build himself up to his strength so he can sing.
Yes, he was building back his strength from being locked away.
Now that he's singing, we know he's strong.
Exactly.
Keep that in mind, people and children.
Characters sing when they're strong.
If you're singing.
Well, sometimes you're weak.
I guess that's true.
Sometimes you sing like a lament.
A lament. Ooh, I love a good.
But still.
I love a good lament.
Okay, so at this point, I'm going to have Christian watch it. We're going to watch it, and we're going to have some commentary, but it might be awkward for you if you're not watching it with us to just hear the commentary, because we have to put some sound effects over top of the audio that you're going to hear to avoid copyright problems.
Some spooky witch's cauldron bubbles.
Yeah, so not that you don't want to listen to that, but it might be more fun for you if you watch either before or with us. So feel free to type that into the Google right quick, or pause and come back to us. Just don't forget to come back to us. Please. So without further ado, we are beginning the toxic love scene from Ferngully.
And a good thing I got my ice packs because I'm about to get so hot.
Yeah, you gotta cool it down because it's gonna rock your world.
Ooh, all right, ready. I'm gonna hit play.
Ready?
And go.
Slurpee.
Oh yeah. So it's a black skeleton coming out of the sludge. Oh man.
Very burlesque.
Yes, it is so burlesque. It's like, what did we say? What did you say the other day?
I don't know what I said the other day.
Hold on. It's not burlesque, but it's like...
It's like cabaret. Yeah.
Well,
drag?
Drag.
Oh.
That's what it is. It's like a drag routine. Ooh, okay,
he's like eating himself?
He's eating himself. And he burps a big old bubble. Oh my god. Suck 'em dry.
And because
And
it's a kid's
spit 'em
show, I
out.
spit them out like spinach.
Money and palm trees.
So much symbolism.
All the cogs in the machine.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god.
That chainsaw's
My
terrible
sweet
and
breath.
scary.
Ooh.
I'm kind of setting fire, like forest
Okay.
fire.
Yeah, he just had an orgasm. Yep.
Oh yeah,
Ooh.
his shoulders, the shoulder
Acid,
movement
yeah, he's
of
like swinging his
this.
shoulders. Acid rain, emphasis on the ass. Oh, that's sperm. Slime beneath me. Slime up above. God, he's like being pleasured throughout this entire
Yes,
sequence.
yes. So he's in this machine. You see the machine. That's the humans
There's
who
the
made
big
it,
machine. I see it.
and he's now part of the machine.
I mean,
Yes.
great scene, though. I mean, that's amazing. But so dark. That's so dark.
That's pretty dark. So yeah, we all grew up with that. Just here presented
God.
to us for fun.
I'll say it. That's inappropriate for children.
I would not disagree, but we loved it and I ate it up and it was great, like Tim Curry and whatever. And listener, if you have never listened to the original soundtrack version of a song, highly recommend because it's slightly extended. It's a little bit longer and there's a verse extra in it that I guess they just thought was too much for the movie. But in my mind, then how did it get released with the soundtrack of the movie? Because the same people that watched the movie would be buying the soundtrack. I don't know.
Was it more of a time constraint thing, or do you think it was just an inappropriate censorship?
Maybe a little bit of both.
What can we stand to cut? Oh, this for sure.
Probably this. This would be a good thing to cut.
Yeah, I didn't get all of the lyrics, so.
Right. So you want me to just like read it to you?
Toxic love.
Yeah, the first lyrics literally say, sludge. Like very sexual.
Oopy. Goopy.
Filth and fumes.
Filthy.
Filthy. So the first verse is oil and grime, poison sludge, diesel clouds, and noxious muck. I always was very, it was very impressionable the way that Hexxus said noxious muck. It was just this
Yeah.
I don't know, the diction of it was very
Diction.
much.
Yes, you can feel
it's
words.
Tim Curry, so of course you can.
It's Tim Curry.
Like you said, slime beneath me, slime up above. Ooh, you'll love my toxic love. But it's like building to something, if you catch my drift.
Basically.
The second verse says, I see the world and all the creatures in it. I suck them dry and spit them out like spinach.
He doesn't swallow.
So I suck them dry and I spit them out. So they included spinach to be like, this is for children. Children don't like spinach. They spit it out.
Ooh, spinach.
Spinach. So that was like this. We
Oh my
remember who
God.
our audience is in this one singular moment of songwriting.
This is so
Everything's out the window now. The next line, one of my personal favorites. I feel, and now granted, yes, he's a cloud of pollution. So he is literally growing, enhancing, and becoming more and more himself by the minute. So it says, I feel the power. It's growing by the minute.
Ooh, it's growing.
And pretty soon, you're going to see me wallow in it.
Oh my God.
That's what he says. So I'll let the listenership make their own conclusions there.
I missed that line. Is that part of the song or is this new?
That is part of the song.
I missed that completely.
That is included. This is the verse, however,
no.
that was not included in the film. So
Okay.
this is the extra verse that you may or may not have heard.
Here we go. I got my cold compresses right here in
The places where you
right
need them.
here in the hot spots.
This verse says, I feel good,
Yeah.
a special kind of horny.
Horny?
Horny. That's literally, I think, what they had to take out.
Are you serious?
Yes.
All right.
And this is more on brand with the film, right?
Okay.
Flowers and trees depress and frankly bore me. So he doesn't want flowers and trees. He wants pollution and, shopping malls and et cetera, et
Yeah, he's
cetera.
not really a flowers and candy kind of guy.
Exactly. I think I'll spew them all with cyanide saliva. Why do you need to include the word cyanide in a children's film? Which you don't, I guess. That's why it's on the soundtrack.
Or saliva.
Or saliva, for that matter.
Or horny.
Horny particularly.
Sorry, I'm getting a little bit worked up.
As you should. This is pretty out there. Pour me a puke cocktail
Ugh.
and take me to the driver.
Oh my God.
In the soundtrack, as you're listening to it, when Tim Curry says, pour me a puke cocktail, he like gags and burps. It's so gross.
That's so disturbing.
This was in my brain. And I don't want to make anyone feel bad for letting their children watch Ferngully because it still has a really strong message, very conservationist, environmentalist message.
And we support these messages.
It's good on the whole, but wow, like they let Tim Curry just do his thing. I did see on the internet a lot of people making comparisons with his songs from Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah.
They were all contemporaries, so they had fun with this in the studio.
Sure.
Okay, so to continue with the lyrics. Filthy brown acid rain pouring down like egg chow mein, like that's part of the animation, I guess.
Yeah.
Just kind of, they had to throw that in there to make kids laugh, I guess.
Yeah.
All that's foul, all that's stained, breeding in my toxic brain.
Oh, in your toxic brain.
Ugh, I don't like that. Just like parasites freak me out, infection freaks me out, and that phrasing just is absolutely horrendous to me.
I feel so filthy, toxic.
The next verse. I can't remember if this is in the movie or not. We literally just watched it and I can't recall. So tell me if I'm wrong. Can't remember. But, and after dinner, I could go for something sweet. Revenge for all those years locked in a tree. I do think that's in there. I'll crush and grind all creatures great and small and put up parking lots and shiny shopping malls.
Nice.
So that whole like capitalist consumerism, anti-consumerism messaging is like deep-seated in here too.
They paved paradise and
Put up a parking lot. Because greedy human beings will always lend a hand with the destruction of this worthless jungle land. And I mean, they're not wrong.
he's right.
And it's only gotten worse since 1992. But hey.
He had to get real wrong to be right.
Man, don't even get me started. There's a whole other song I want to do. If you're familiar, All Dogs Go to Heaven too. Feels so good to be bad.
I know All Dogs Go to Heaven.
I'm probably unlocking something for some people.
I don't know about the second one, but I've seen
I
the
love
first
the
one.
sequel, but we'll cover that one too as a WTF because it is... Well, Feels So Good to Be Bad was a little... Satan was singing to one of the main characters.
You've told me about that, yes.
Feels so good to be bad. Yeah.
Interesting, my God.
Similar. Okay. And what a beautiful machine they have provided. That's that clawing, scratching thing. What is it called? It's like the Eliminator or the... I literally just read about it. I'm so sorry. This is my ADHD brain. I have no working memory.
You can look it up and then...
We can add it in there.
Yeah.
You're like, we can do this. It's a podcast.
It's fine.
It's not
I can
live.
edit everything.
Let's see. What's it called?
I want another beer.
You need to eat first. Oh, leveler. It's called a leveler.
A leveler? Or
Yeah,
the
I think that's
leveler?
a real thing, but this one has like arms and legs, basically. It's almost a transformer.
Yeah.
And probably because Hexxus is possessing it. But yeah. To slice a path of doom with my foul breath to guide it.
Yeah, the breath thing.
The imagery there, the foul breath of the machine is like the emission from the machine, right?
Yeah.
So anytime a kid is hearing this, kind of having all this stuff rattling around in their brain, and then they see how disgusting the pollution is coming from the big machine. Very pointed, very effective. And then he does his hit me once, hit me one time, hit me twice, and then that's rather nice. So it's, again...
Yeah.
The building, the burlesque, the showmanship of it. Oil and grime, poison sludge, diesel clouds and noxious muck. Slime beneath me, slime up above. Ooh, you'll love my toxic love.
Oof.
So that's the song Toxic Love. I'm inclined right now to ask you for your first impressions of this song.
Me?
Yes.
Oh.
You, Christian, my co-host of this podcast.
My first impressions? Super sexual. Super inappropriate. Oh my gosh. First impressions. I mean, I get the whole, like, it's really interesting that they didn't just do like a be prepared style of like, I'm coming, I'm going to get you, and I'm going to destroy everything. They intentionally went burlesque, drag.
Sexual.
Sexual. It was intentional. And I don't know if they were like, let us put something very adult and very like not childlike onto this evil entity. And they made that conscious decision to like pick the most far-fetched, foreign, inappropriate thing to torment
Coincide.
nature and these fairies or whatever. I don't know if that was their angle,
It
or
would,
if
it would be very unfamiliar to a child and feel
very
very
unfamiliar
foreign,
and feel
right?
strange and odd, and it might make you a
And
little
it-
bit scared, but you may not know why.
Yes.
And I don't know if that was their like intellectual decision for putting all this
Yeah, I don't know.
onto the character, or if they were just like, we love what you did with Rocky Horror Picture Show.
I think
Can you bring
yeah.
that to the character? We wrote some super scandalous lyrics. We don't have Disney telling us no.
Yes. I think a lot of it was driven by the casting.
Yeah, I think it was just like, let's make this inappropriate as possible, because you're pollution. You're the
Right.
most inappropriate thing on the planet. So let's make it let's make it something where even adults are uncomfortable.
Let's mix everything in so that everybody feels uncomfortable, pretty much.
It's well done. I'll say that much.
Yeah, definitely well done.
Tim Curry.
Makes you feel some type of way.
Yeah, it makes you feel a certain kind of icky. You feel
Yes.
like I need to take a shower.
I think that you're on the right track with the Tim Curry casting decision and why it was the way it was. Because, again, not to go too deep into Ferngully, but one of the main reasons that Ferngully even happened is because Robin Williams signed on to be Batty Coda, the other most recognizable character, if not the most recognizable character,
right.
from the Ferngully franchise.
Mhm.
And his star power, honestly, was a catalyst to creating the whole thing. And
Sure.
little tidbit to lead you in once we do our Ferngully episode, but one of the like central conflicts around making this movie was basically Disney didn't want Robin Williams to do it
Yeah.
because he was also concurrently voicing the genie in Aladdin. And they didn't want him to have his voice in 2 films at the same time. And Robin Williams was basically like, it's my voice, you can't tell me that. And so he kind of got mad.
Right. You don't own me. I don't have a contract.
And not only that, but he cared about environmental causes.
What a saint.
Yeah,
God.
he was like, I'm going to do this because I care about it. And you can't make me or stop me because it's my voice and I am in control of my voice. So he was the main reason that the movie even happened. And Batty Coda was written for Robin Williams.
Yeah.
And you can tell in the character as you watch the movie, you can tell that it was written for him.
Mhm.
So I think a lot of the same thing. I think Hexxus was almost written for Tim Curry.
Probably. Yeah, I think you're right. That's an interesting parallel, because like one of the first times you see the sludge and then you see the hands begin to reach out, and the physical body that emerges from the sludge is this black skeleton.
The skeleton is a big deal, and it comes back later. The idea is kind of across the internet, I should say, is that the skeleton look, the death look, like almost like Grim Reaper sort of thing, is Hexxus' final form.
Interesting.
Like that's what he's evolving into.
Becoming a physical body, not just a sludgy pudding body.
He is death. He is the Grim Reaper. He's bringing destruction, and that skeleton is like seeing who he really is.
And then he goes from the skeleton in this scene goes from a sludge to a fume.
Yes.
He goes from a liquid to a solid to a vapor. So the first time I saw the vapor version, the toxic miasma, he reminded me of the genie. So that's a funny parallel that they were like, oh, screw you, Disney. The
Pretty
first
much.
face you see that isn't the skeleton is going to be this genie-esque.
And honestly, in my, like, as a kid, another thing that I connected, 2 characters that I connected, and I'm honestly kind of surprised you haven't said it, but it's probably because you have stronger ties to the one I'm mentioning, is Oogie Boogie from Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yes, he's very, I don't know what I would categorize him.
He's not sexual in the
He's
same way.
not sexual. He's jazzy.
Sultry.
I don't know. I'm going to find a category for him, because we'll do that. We'll do Nightmare Before Christmas one day too, as a movie night. Also, so we have Genie, we have Oogie Boogie, but also strong Ursula
Yes.
vibes in his very sultry lips.
Yep, and the shoulders is what gets me. The shoulders is where I see Ursula.
She does that kind of, haunt, like, I'm haunting you kind of.
I really want the listeners to know that as we're discussing this, both Christian and I are moving our shoulders
We're doing
in the
the
same
shoulders.
way to emphasize what we're doing, even though you can't see it.
This is a motion I'm unfamiliar with.
Right, yes. I don't know how to channel this, but it looks something like this. Yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, no, that's those are my first impressions. Any other?
Yeah, no. Basically, I was just kind of looking at the internet and what the internet thinks about Hexxus in general, and it's a very polarizing thing. Like, either you have like a fondness for it, an affinity for it from your childhood, or you're like, WTF? Like, why does this exist? Like, this shouldn't exist. I was curious, like, what the parental like guidance websites say about Ferngully because of all this content, and I looked it up, and there are some, like, a lot of the reviews are by people from our generation saying, love this movie, one of my favorites from childhood, highly recommend, it's not that scary. And then there are also all these reviews of like, no, I was traumatized by this movie. Don't let your children watch it. And then there are separate reviews that are just basically like, toxic love. What was that? This is not okay.
Toxic love, WTF.
Pretty much. So it's like either you love it or you hate it. Personally, I do love it, but I remember watching it and feeling intensely uncomfortable. And as a kid, I'm thinking it's because he's a scary villain. That's scary. And all I could associate it with was scary.
Mm-hmm.
But it isn't that it's just scary. It's that it's, like you said, foreign, unfamiliar. It's different. Mm-hmm. You mentioned this. You literally almost kind of tied up what I was going to say earlier, because you said it's going to make kids uncomfortable, but they may not necessarily know why.
Right.
That was my experience with it. He was a villain, so he was scary, but I have always loved villains, a villain song. Like, I liked those characters because they were more interesting to me a lot of times than the protagonist.
Sure.
Like,
they're always more complex than the hero. Always.
There's a complexity to it. So I always have been a villain fan. Like, me personally, even from childhood.
I'm a huge villain fan. Yeah,
however, the difference with Hexxus is just the way that he's just the, like...
Oh, he's breathing. Yeah.
Yeah, at a certain point, kids are just not developmentally ready to understand certain topics, obviously. Maybe not until they're like 10, 11, 12. I don't know, but I certainly was not 10, 11, or 12 when I was watching this movie. It came out the same year I was born, so I had to have been maybe 3, 4, 5 when I was into it, and then...
I was 30.
You haven't even watched the whole movie yet.
No,
you don't even know.
I've only seen the one scene.
I'm not particularly comfortable with the idea of sex. I'm not very good when things get sensual, and that's what was taught to me. The discomfort was taught to me growing up, deeply embedded in purity culture.
Same.
Like, my family didn't know how to talk about it. I didn't know how to be around it. Unless I was in an intimate moment with another person, I didn't know what I was doing. I felt uncomfortable. I didn't know how to approach it, I guess.
It's like looking into a mirror. Strange.
Purity culture really affected my development and a lot of people's development in that area as millennials. We've learned about like the satanic panic in the 80s and 90s and how that all fed into how we all learned about like sexuality in general. Yeah. And so this like uncomfortable feeling that we felt we didn't understand, and even watching it later, I was still trying to come to terms with it, and it still made me deeply uncomfortable. And that's why to this day it's kind of making us uncomfortable, even though part of the reason why that is because we know it was made for kids. At the end of the day, we were just brought up in a way that makes us uncomfortable around this topic and everything. Yeah. I know that we all had the experience where you're like watching something, even something like this probably, on TV, and your mom's suddenly like, oh, anybody want more like popcorn? Like, you want to, like, let's look over here, you know, a weird commercial comes on, or like a sex
distracting
scene.
People or trying to distract themselves.
Yeah, like, or I would always just like start talking. I'd be compelled to just like take the attention off of what we're all watching together. I wasn't taught to be comfortable with this type of content. I was never taught that. I was taught to avoid it, to make a joke of it, to make light of it. And honestly, I think it's interesting that most of the time in these films, things that stick out to me and shows, villains like Hexxus, him from Powerpuff Girls, there are so many of these villains. Sedusa. There are so many of these villains that have this sensual nature to them. It kind of warped my view as well, because the way that it was taught to me and everything, hero villain, you have this binary complex, opposing forces, and everything sensual was always on the side of the villain. I can't say there weren't heroes that weren't sensual too. I'm sure that there were, but in general, if these types of feelings came up, it was associated with a villain, somebody bad. Yeah. And so that didn't help anything when I'm deeply entrenched in this purity culture. And then I'm being told, oh, this is bad. It's villainous. You shouldn't be like a villain. They have all these terrible traits, and this is one of them, you know? And
yet we identify with most of the villainous traits.
Oh, man. Like you said, you know, they are more complex characters, and that is a part of life that is complex and important. I was talking with a friend of mine actually about the whole idea of purity culture and how important sex ed actually is, especially in the Bible Belt, places where all the rates for everything that the purity culture is trying to fight against, the rates are higher for STDs, teen pregnancy, all of that stuff comes from this lack of knowledge.
Oh, you mean ignorance breeds that kind of bad decision making?
Yes.
Interesting.
Ignorance breeds bad decision making. You heard it here, not first, probably for the millionth time.
That's Pretty Dark podcast exclusive.
Ignorance breeds bad decisions. I posted about something about purity culture recently and how important sex ed is.
Mhm.
And my friend was like, made a good point, basically saying that parents can't cope with the intersection of like their children and sexuality. And I thought that was so true and so well said. Because
Well,
they
our
can't.
parents
Our
in this
parents.
area. I'm. You're right. I'm learning that other parents in other places aren't like that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm jealous, kind of.
Me too.
Because I'm like, oh man, how nice it would
I mean,
be.
there are some really great, I'm going to mention TikTok again, but there are some really great examples on TikTok of these moms that have kids that are at different age levels. And so they have questions. They always go to their mom with these questions. I could not imagine asking a question of anybody else related to, or any human being really ever at all when I was in that age range. It just would never have happened because of all this weird avoidance. It was just all avoidance all the time.
Pretending it doesn't exist.
But I'm seeing all these great examples of how to talk about it at age appropriate, developmentally appropriate levels to certain groups of kids. I think it's super cool. Way to go. Like, more power to you. I don't have any of the answers, but I did want to kind of make the connection that it's interesting to be talking about this in a public way, in a public forum, because that is not something I saw myself doing.
Right.
You know, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, I really wasn't there.
So is this making you uncomfortable right now, talking about it?
This right now is not. And that's what I think is cool, is that
It's good.
I can tell that I've come over the hump, but like, it shouldn't be that way. There shouldn't have been this hurdle to climb.
Yeah.
And I hope that for future generations, there isn't. But I think for a lot of people that grew up as millennials and people that grew up like us, it was just confusing. And we didn't have a whole lot of answers anywhere we looked.
Right. And so Hexxus on the screen.
So we turned to the internet and
dancing
Hexxus.
and swinging his hips and his shoulders around. He's getting you all steamy, huh?
I didn't know how to name that feeling until middle school, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Also, I was 30.
How old? Hey, Christian, how old were you when you?
I just had my sexual awakening.
Oh, well, welcome. Welcome to the club.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
But
it's good to be here.
Like, all that being said, all of the developmental stuff aside, I feel like, you know, toxic love was still over our heads, and that's okay. We weren't ready for it yet, and it became something to laugh at later.
Yeah.
But I still think that it's interesting that more often than not, the villains are the sensual ones, and we're given that really negative and bad connotation so early. So, like, doubling that up with purity culture servings that I got, it was really hard to shake and get past it.
Right.
I'm grateful that there are parents out there now that are normalizing like really healthy expression of sexuality and understanding those things about yourself and others much earlier, because it builds a foundation for, you know, normalizing consent. And I think it's all really important and really cool. And, you know, hats off and props to everybody that's doing that work, because it just wasn't done when we were kids. And I think it's going to make a difference, a big time difference in the way that people approach all these topics.
That saves you from hearing that conversation
from a manipulative, self-serving,
narcissistic,
what's the word?
Toxic loving. I mean, a toxic masculinity
a toxic
type man,
masculinity,
boy. Sorry, let's talk about boys.
Boy,
this isn't a man. Who does that.
Yeah, it's difficult for kids in middle school, high school, like hearing these things from a guy that they want to like them.
Right, and absolutely. If you don't know any better, then the guy's going to tell you, hey, this is okay. He's
going to give you his version.
I'm doing this for you, babe.
And I cannot even tell you how many like friends, people that I know that had those kinds of experiences where they ended up in positions they did not want to be in because they didn't know any different. They knew what was told to them by somebody that had a different agenda. And then they were just left with the aftermath and healing from that, which is something that I and so many other women my age are going through.
Yeah.
So we've come a long way from Hexxus. I know this is like some real hard hitting stuff, but hey, I think it's important to talk about. And if we're going to make all the jokes and have fun with all the like funny, like we can't believe this was outrageous, this was in a kid's movie. If we're going to do all that, we might as well do this too.
Because they were throwing all these adult themes into
they were mixing all the adult themes into kids' entertainment, and you're exactly right. That's why we're here.
We're conversing.
Yeah, thanks for letting me get on my soapbox for a second.
You're absolutely welcome. Anytime. Hey, this is your podcast. Hey,
get ready for some more soapboxes. If you liked that, there's more where that came from. And if you didn't, I don't know, get the hell out or something.
Yeah, get the hell out. You can see yourself out. There's the door. Don't let it hit you on your way out.
If you're my follower on Instagram, if we're buds and you follow me on Instagram, I have whole highlights of my stories on all this type of stuff. It's in like my feel highlight. Real good stuff.
Real good
So
stuff.
if you're feeling that way, you're not the only one.
Guess what, guys? You're not alone.
But we can, speculate all day about what the animators meant and what they were trying to do. I would like to think, and I honestly do think, that it probably wasn't even that deep. It was, we're getting Tim Curry, so let's make this for Tim Curry.
Let's make him enjoy this.
Right, pretty much. And he did, apparently, from what I've read. Like, he thought it was a fun character. But for our listeners, I thought it would be a fun callback. If you, remember watching the movie, but maybe it made you uncomfortable and you didn't want to watch it anymore, but you don't remember why, this might be why.
Yeah.
Or maybe one of the reasons. Obviously, there are some other scary, actual violence and, that type of stuff that probably stuck in your mind, too. Obviously, Batty is a pretty scary character, or can be for really young kids.
Yeah, for young kids,
And his whole storyline is about being experimented on for, a cosmetics company, testing on animals, animal testing, and all that stuff, which is...
Right.
I'm not going to say it was ahead of its time, because I do think there was a movement there for it to join, but it was... it was one of my first, exposures to that reality, and hoping that doesn't happen again anymore, seeing... And that's the goal, right? They're marketing this to kids, hoping that it will modify the behavior of a generation.
Right, exactly.
And I think it kind of did, which is pretty cool, all things considered.
Well, a lot of that ties back into what we talked about, advertising to children and the children's programming of let's use this concept to our advantage, and let's
what's ethical about what you present to kids.
Yeah, let's present them this whole save the planet mentality, which is great.
But it's furthering an agenda.
Yeah, it is furthering an agenda, but it was supposed to change the thinking of a generation.
That's an effective way to do it.
It's a great way to do it.
Right. You want to change the face of everything. Start with the kids.
Right. Let's brainwash them. Let's tell them what we...
I mean, I support it in certain circumstances for things like that.
For sure.
It definitely still sticks with us.
Yeah, for sure.
And I mean, that was half of the entertainment that I did consume. Yeah. It's all very Aesop. It all has a moral to the story. It was part of that movement to have educational content for kids available.
Right, yeah, because it served a moral and societal purpose.
It all ties in together. It's just somehow sometimes things like toxic love kind of slip through the cracks. When you're teaching kids about the world, it's are they ready for this particular lesson? I don't know.
Right. I was going to say something else, but I forgot what it was. You were saying something about, I know what it was. It was the anthropomorphizing. It was just continued that cartoon trope of taking something, a concept like sludge and pollution, and making it a humanoid. And then like Batty.
You're giving a face to a problem.
Like animal testing is bad. But when you present a character that can walk and talk and tell you about what it was like to be experimented on, that's different.
Exactly.
Than just going, oh, poor animals. It's oh, I can identify with this
specific
character.
animal. Yes.
Yeah.
And it clearly hurt him and affected him, and
yes,
and he can tell you exactly why. There's some fun stuff in that too. The Batty rap is also pretty WTF if you really look at the full version.
You played that for me, the Batty rap.
Oh yes, I did force him to listen to the Batty rap, which I can I can recite. I love it. If you ever need me to, I can do it on command. But there are elements of that song that are also in the full soundtrack version that I would also highly recommend you go listen to if you haven't heard it in a while. Things all the way down to you hear in the movie, it says, you hear a shadow and Batty's narrating that the doctor's get me another one, get me another animal. At the end of the song, they allude to this, the doctor's talking to the nurse, and he's why, how come you never call me back?
Oh, really?
This there's all this stuff inside that song.
Oh my goodness.
That is purely just for adults. And I mean, we could go into a whole other episode and tangent about including mature jokes in children's entertainment for the parents' enjoyment.
Yeah.
And that happens to this day.
Sure.
So I think this was probably an early example of that as well. Because if a parent was watching the Batty rap and heard something like that, they were probably kind of haha, that's clever.
Gives you a chuckle.
Yeah.
Gives you something to enjoy when your kid forces you to watch it. Right.
Right. And I mean, it gives the movie legs. It did decently well at the box office. Ferngully did. So.
Sure.
And it became what it is, for a whole generation of people looking back at it. It was very formative. So, for better or worse, Ferngully taught us a lot. So yeah, that was Toxic Love.
Yeah, wow. Thanks for subjecting me to this.
I'm really glad that you watched it.
Toxic sexuality. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. But I learned a lot about the environment and pollution. So
that's all you can ask for, right?
I want to make the world a better place. Thanks for listening to our first WTF episode.
Yeah, if you have ideas for, what made you say WTF or things that you and your group of friends have found to be unsettling from
Oh,
your
yeah.
childhood, let us know.
Let us know. We'll cover
We'll
it.
discuss it. We'll look at it. We'll see if we can figure out why.
Yeah, Ian, like just like this one, I'd never seen Ferngully, so even if we don't know what you're talking about, we'll look it up and we'll do an episode on it.
Yeah, we're excited to learn what else was out there.
So yeah, let us know what you want us to cover, and thanks for listening to That's Pretty Dark.
Thanks for listening. Yeah, look for more episodes like this and others.
Thanks. We're new at this. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for listening to That's Pretty Dark. Written and produced by Christian Baxter Mott and Kaylin Andrews.
Our music is composed by Jonathan Simmons, and our art is provided by Paige Garland at Power Girl Illustration.
Join the collective nostalgia and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at That's Pretty Dark Podcast.
Share your experiences and let us know what shows, films, or villains still haunt you from childhood at that'sprettydarkpodcast@gmail.com. Remember, you're never really alone.
So, until next time, sweet dreams, everyone.